for $33 billion to fund both humanitarian and military aid to Ukraine through September of this year. The massive aid package is accompanied by a proposal to Congress that it amend several long-standing criminal laws to make it easier for the U.S. to sell off the seized assets of sanctioned Russian oligarchs. The $33 billion includes a request for $20.4 billion in additional security and military assistance for Ukraine, as well as additional money to fund U.S. efforts to bolster European security in cooperation with NATO allies. Meanwhile, Ukraine has launched a hunt for 10 Russian soldiers accused of war crimes in Bucha, the town outside of the capital Kiev, where civilians were tortured, raped and murdered. The Ministry of Defense, which shared pictures of the soldiers, described them as the despicable 10. Prosecutors say they are being investigated for premeditated murder. They are also accused of holding innocent civilians hostage, beating them and looting homes. Moscow has denied any crimes were committed in Bucha, which was under the control of the 64th Motorized Infantry Brigade for more than a month at the start of the war. Away from that, the Palestinian Red Crescent has said that at least 42 Palestinians have been injured in a raid by Israeli police forces on the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in occupied East Jerusalem following weeks of violence at the Flashpoint site. The unrest came on the final Friday in the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. The Red Crescent said most of those injured suffered upper body injuries, adding that 22 people had been taken to hospital. Israeli police said forces entered the compound after rioters hurled stones and fireworks, including down towards the Western Wall, the sacred Jewish site below Al-Aqsa. Meanwhile, a U.S. family caused a bomb scare at Israel's main international airport after presenting an unexploded artillery shell at a security checkpoint. They had picked up the ordnance on a visit to the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, site of wars between Israel and Syria, according to authorities. Video footage on social media showed people running from the scene in panic. The family was allowed to board their flight after being interrogated by security, who gave the all clear. Israel captured most of the Golan Heights from Syria during the Six-Day War in 1967, and remnants of the conflict can still be found in the area. In a separate development, Amazon has reported its first quarterly loss since 2015 due to lower online sales and a fall in the value of its shares in electric vehicle firm Rivian. Online sales at the e-commerce giant slipped 3% in the first 3 months of the year as the boom to its business from the pandemic starts to fade. Meanwhile, Apple warned its sales could be hit by up to $8 billion following disruptions from lockdowns in China. Both firms face supply chain issues and the impact of the war in Ukraine. Growth in other parts of Amazon's business, including cloud computing and advertising, remained strong. The company reported a loss of $3.8 billion, mainly due to a loss of $7.6 billion on the value of its stake in Rivian. Sri Lanka's finance minister has told media he has no choice but to hike the country's sales tax as it faces its worst ever economic crisis. In an exclusive interview, Ali Sabri conceded the government made a mistake when it almost halved the rate of value-added tax, VAT, to 8% in 2019. Sabri says the nation needs $4 billion over the next 8 months to pay for imports of daily essentials. His comments come amid mass protests over government economic policies. Sabri, who is leading negotiations with the IMF, as well as other lenders such as India, and one of its largest creditors, China, said raising taxes was just one of the difficult decisions he would have to make as talks continue over a bailout deal. India's weather department has issued a severe wave warning as temperatures soar, throwing millions of lives and livelihoods out of gear. Prime Minister Narendra Modi told state chief ministers on Wednesday that temperatures are rising rapidly in the country and rising much earlier than usual. The India Meteorological Department (IMD) has forecast a gradual rise in maximum temperatures by 2 to 4 Celsius over most parts of northwestern and central India this week, with no large change thereafter, while heat waves are common in India, especially in May and June. Summer began earlier this year with high temperatures from March itself. Average maximum temperatures in the month were the highest in 122 years. Heat waves also began setting in during the month. The Center for Science and Environment, a think tank, says that early heat waves this year have affected around 15 states, including the northern state of Himachal Pradesh, known for its pleasant temperatures. This week, the mercury in the capital, Delhi, is expected to cross 44 Celsius. Away from that, an ex-general in the Afghan army says he and many other former soldiers and politicians are preparing to launch a new war against the Taliban. Lieutenant General Sami Sadat said that 8 months of Taliban rule has convinced many Afghans that military action is the only way forward. He said operations could begin next month after the Islamic Eid festival, when he plans to return to Afghanistan. The Taliban took control of the country in a rapid offensive last August. The hardline Islamists swept across the country in just 10 days as the last US-led NATO forces left following a 20-year military campaign. Speaking for the first time about the plans, Lieutenant General Sadat told media he and others would do anything and everything in their powers to make sure Afghanistan is freed from the Taliban and a democratic system is re-established. Meanwhile, the supreme leader of the Taliban, Hibatullah Akhundzada, has called on the international community to recognize the Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan. Akhundzada made the call in a message ahead of Eid holidays without touching on the issue of girls' education. The Taliban-led government is yet to be recognized by any country since it returned to power last August, 20 years after it was toppled in a US-led invasion. According to him, the world has become a small village, and proper diplomatic relations will solve the country's problems. Away from that, the US Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA, says the British Virgin Islands Premier and Chief Port Official were arrested yesterday at a Miami area airport on charges of conspiring to traffic cocaine. DEA agents at the Miami OPA Lanka Executive Airport took Premier Andrew Fahey and BVI Port Authority Managing Director Olivine Maynard into custody after they allegedly agreed to accept money from undercover agents posing as Mexican drug traffickers. Fahey and Maynard were to inspect a plane carrying $700,000 that they would receive in exchange for facilitating cocaine shipments through their Caribbean territory, reported the Herald, citing U.S. authorities. DEA Administrator Ann Milgram in a statement said the officials' arrests should send a clear message. After the break, China's leaders pledge support for economy and boosting markets. Do stay with us. Many thanks for staying tuned. On a UN report, more than 3,000 migrants, refugees and asylum seekers are said to have died or gone missing last year while trying to reach Europe via Mediterranean and Atlantic Sea routes, according to a new report by the United Nations Refugee Agency UNHCR. UNHCR's Shabia Mantour told a news briefing in Geneva today that the figure for 2021, a year in which Europe hardened its borders as new refugee crises fled, represented nearly twice the number of lives lost in the previous year. Of the 2021 total, 1,924 people were reported dead or missing on the central and western Mediterranean routes. According to UNHCR's report, an additional 1,153 were reported dead or went missing on the Northwest African maritime route to the Canary Islands. Away from that, prosecutors, federal police and other officials searched Deutsche Bank's headquarters in Frankfurt today in a move Germany's largest lender said was linked to suspicions of money laundering it had reported to the authorities. Under Chief Executive Christian Sewing, Deutsche Bank has been trying to repair its reputation after a series of embarrassing and costly regulatory failings. In a statement, Deutsche Bank said the search involved suspicious transactions it had itself passed on to authorities and that it was cooperating fully. Prosecutors said they had a search warrant but declined to elaborate. They said representatives of financial regulator BaFin were also taking part. BaFin and federal police, however, declined to comment. Away from that, as Germany speeds up investment in renewables, the energy consumption of its car makers reveals how reliant the country's most important industry is on fossil fuels. This is according to an analysis of environmental data. The deductions show that their dependence reveals the hurdles automakers face in transforming their own energy consumption while moving the transport sector. The sector is reportedly responsible for around 30% of German energy consumption towards electromobility. Away from that, China will take steps to support its economy, including embattled internet platforms, as risks grow from its COVID-19 outbreaks and conflict in Ukraine. A top decision-making body of the ruling Communist Party said today, lifting markets. The coronavirus and conflict in Ukraine have contributed to economic headwinds in a crucial year for China and President Xi Jinping, who is expected to secure a president-breaking third leadership term in the autumn. Private economists have said Beijing's target for economic growth of about 5.5% this year will be hard to achieve without significant stimulus, as lockdowns and other tough curbs to battle the pandemic create havoc for supply chains. Friday's Politburo meeting, chaired by Xi, said it would support COVID-hit industries and small firms, speed work on infrastructure, and stabilize transport logistics and supply chains, according to a statement on the central government's website. Away from that, British comedian and actor turned US talk show host James Corden has announced that he will be leaving the Late Show next year. He made the announcement during a recording of the CBS network show in Los Angeles. Corden, who is best known in the UK for TV series Gavin and Stacey, has hosted the US-based talk show since 2015. Speaking on a recent edition of the show, he said it had been the hardest decision he had ever made. Corden took over the role of hosting the late-night talk show from comedian and actor Greg Ferguson in 2015. Still from more news, cast of Downton Abbey are returning for the second film, A New Era, which is inspired by the hit TV series. The show, which ended its run on British television in 2015, was created by Julian Fellowes, who wrote the script for both films. According to reports, the UK cinema release will take place today. As we wind down now, award-winning writer Stephen Knight is to create a new BRC drama series set in the era. Two-tone with Telly, a story of an extended family and 4 young people drawn into the scene, which grew out of Coventry and Birmingham in the late 70s and early 80s, unifying black, white, and Asian youths at that time. Knight said the series' soundtrack would be sensational. It will start filming later this year at Knight's new Birmingham studios. The 6th and final series of his BBC drama Peaky Blinders, also based in the city, concluded earlier this month. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, SpectrumTv.ng. You have been watching Worldview on Spectrum TV. I am Xavier Robert. You have a terrific evening.